Our relationship with how we build the containers of our lives affect the way that we perceive the world, and those perceptions affect the stories that we write about it. And now I have that knowledge. So when I'm feeling really sad and particularly purposeless, I was feeling that way Monday, Tuesday. I have a lot more compassion for myself now.
Welcome to the Healing Cocoon. I'm Jacoby Gray, soul alignment and success coach and energy healer, which means I can intuit the subtle layers of your energy field to promote ultimate health and well-being. My goal for this podcast is to shed light on the healing journey itself and help you feel more supported as you embark on the process of unpacking your past to consciously create your present and start living the life of your dreams. Through the study of coaching, kinesiology, holographic kinetics, meditation, Reiki, the chakra system, and many other modalities, I've learned how to release the blocks that were holding me back. Now I'd love to help you do the same. By embarking on your own self-healing process, you'll see the world transforming around you in ways you never thought possible. You'll begin to experience more connection, clarity, love, fulfillment, synchronicity, and success than you've ever had before. So welcome to the Ascension. Hello, beautiful humans, and welcome back to the Healing Cocoon podcast. This week we're speaking with one of my good friends, Eli Walker, and she and I met on the plane to Bali at the beginning of 2017. I was moving over there for a few months. She was on her way to assist on a yoga retreat, and we just connected on the plane through our shared backgrounds of theatre and yoga. Well, I was still to step into my yogic path at that point, but definitely we'd both been seekers on the spiritual path. Eli graduated from NYU's Tisch School of the Art with a BFA in acting, and after nearly a decade of training and teaching yoga across the globe, she developed a knack for fostering community engagement by making wellness interactive and fun. In 2017, she married her lifelong passions of storytelling and mindful movement to establish her first company, Drunk Yoga, which infuses yogic convention with the social ritual of a happy hour. As Drunk Yoga grew to international acclaim, Eli discovered how to translate the very same theatrical devices she leveraged in her one-woman shows and these experiential wellness events into a methodology that now teaches leaders to create authentic communities, cultivate deeper connections, and inspire belonging. Eli has had a really incredible healing journey that has led her to this place where she can now help others to create community and come home to themselves. And the really cool thing is that a lot of that journey happened prior to being 25. She's always been a seeker, as you'll find out in this podcast. And I love how vulnerable she is in sharing the journey she went through to get to where she is today. So I was really interested in getting you on the show because you and I met when I had jumped on a plane to Bali. You had jumped on a plane to Bali. You were about to do like a sister yoga retreat. And I don't know, we just had a lot in common. We both came from a theatre background and we kind of just really connected. And your story before you met me has been pretty wild in terms of going to India and certain things happening there, which I'd love to talk about, but I won't give it away. So why don't we just sort of start at the beginning of where you feel your healing journey personally kind of was initiated?
My healing journey was initiated. It came in waves. So, but there's definitely some pins in those waves that I could elaborate on. Actually, I don't know if I told you this, Jacoby, but when I was in college, I got really, really sick, like hospitalized sick, because this might come as a surprise to you, but I overworked myself.
Not surprised in the slightest.
I
This woman is always juggling a million things and going a million miles an hour, and the word rest. I don't even know if that's part of your vocabulary,
It
is
is
it?
now. I've definitely changed in the last couple of years, but uh, uh, this is way back in with baby Eli, and when I was 19 years old, and it was the time. I can't confirm this, but it was the time when the swine flu was going around, and it might have been that. I'm not sure. I got very sick. I just got like the flu as soon as my sophomore semester college at NYU started, and then it was just one of those illnesses I didn't when you don't know how to take care of yourself because that's not part of your vocabulary. Like it's never really we just you never really learned what self-care looked like. And so I just had no idea. I was working daytime at the NYU housing office and then night shifts at a like a diner waitressing. So I didn't think it was an issue that I was only getting 3 hours of sleep. I just thought, well, I'll just be a little tired. I had no concept that the way that I behaved affected my immune system. Like I didn't understand that at all. Um, and so at some point I just got like really, really, really sick and just didn't really get better. It kind of just like the sickness turned into a sinus infection, which turned into an allergic reaction to some antibiotics, which turned into all sorts of issues. And I ended up in the hospital. And all the issues that continued to like spiral actually seemed to be because of traditional medicine, whether it was antibiotics or antiviral medication or just being in the hospital environment in general. And then I had a professor of mine say, "Have you heard of white tea? Have you heard of white tea?" And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Tea? Who drinks tea? And this man, I can't even remember his name, but he changed my life. He delivered a bag of really, really nice white tea to my dorm. He did not have to do that. He wasn't even my teacher. We just like met in passing. And I started to have some white tea because he said they have antioxidants. And I was like, what are antioxidants?
Yeah, I was about to say, what are the properties of white tea that are better
It's
than, say, black
really, really,
tea?
really good for you. It's low in caffeine, and the antioxidants are even higher than green tea. Apparently, I have to be careful what I say in a podcast because it's there forever. But that's what I've been told. And so I started to have some white tea and started to feel better. And then I don't know, I found my way to a yoga studio, and I was like, well, this feels pretty good. And then I started to just integrate very, very mildly, like good foods, tea, and one yoga class a week into my regimen. And then I liked all of
What
that
about
stuff.
sleep? Were
I
you
tried.
including a bit more
I was
sleep?
trying. I really struggled with insomnia for a long time. Like I really tried to get some sleep. It wasn't until I moved out of the dorms and got my own place that I started to be able to get to some sleep. But yeah, I did get some sleep after a year. um, And then, cut to 5 years later, I did my own yoga teacher training when I was 24 years old. You do know this story. I had a terribly abusive relationship with my yoga teacher who was
Mm.
um, a former Scientologist and had some pretty extreme perspectives on the world and how to treat women. And it was abusive, across the spectrum. Physically, mentally,
How old were you
emotionally,
at this stage?
spiritually, sexually. It was 20. I was 24. He was 48. Um,
Mm.
I extracted myself from that situation. Within the year, um, I continued. That's when I went to India, and I kind of got myself out of that situation by buying a one-way ticket to India, as you do, and
Yeah.
across across the country by myself for about 6 months. Then I ended up. I was also very sick in India. I was really struggling with health, whether it was parasites or the flu or total burnout because I was overdoing it with the yoga too. Surprise, surprise! Like 3 classes a day. It was pretty intense. And then also didn't really have a concept of like nutrition. You just like I thought, well, as long as I'm just eating like raw vegan, just like smoothies all the time, then I'm really healthy. Like no concept that the body also needs, maybe warming foods or some carbs once
Yeah,
in
or
a
just
while.
like actual fuel, particularly if you're literally working out. If you're doing 3 yoga classes a day, like you're kind of athlete realms.
Yeah.
You need like actual fuel.
Yeah. So I guess we could say like sum that up and that like I had a strong concept of like what healthy living looked like, but not for me. Like I still was really in the trenches learning about this concept of intuition slash my intuition slash how to follow it. Um, and I was working on it. I was really working on it. I was doing all sorts of healing. I got my Reiki training in India. I was learning astrology. I was working with plant medicine, and then I found my way to Thailand just because I wanted to scuba dive. And then I went over to my scuba diver instructor's house, and that's where I fell through his roof. And
So casual, and that's where I fell through his roof.
this is sort of these are the pinpoints of the healing waves.
Yeah, I'm loving this story. I think everyone listening to this is loving this. And this is all before the age of 25,
Yeah,
right?
I had just turned
Mm,
25, and so
mm.
I cracked most of my ribs. I tore my shoulder. I was pretty incapacitated. My body went into shock. I was alone in the jungle. I just fallen like 12 feet down this roof onto concrete, and I was completely at the mercy. I wanted to go home. Like I had just bought a plane ticket home, and now I had to then once again extend it for 2 months until I could physically put on my backpack. Um, Turned out to be a really beautiful 2 months. I got really close to the people whose roof I fell through and broke because I couldn't leave their apartment, and they were healing me back to life, which is really interesting, Jacoby. And I want to put a pin in this wave too, because I had thought that I was under the impression that there is a space where healing happens, and that's in yoga studios, and that's in healing on healing beds with Reiki and sound bowls and crystals. And it's with people who are self-proclaimed, spiritual guides who are singing around fire circles and dancing. Like that's where healing happens, and everywhere else is when it doesn't. And so I had this idea in my mind that as soon as I left India and these spiritual sort of sectors that I was in these backpacking populations and these very spiritual cities, that was done. The spiritual journey was over. The healing journey was over, and now it was just time to have fun. And in my mind, those two worlds were very different. I had not planned
Compartmentalized.
on learning anything about myself in Thailand. I was just going to drink beer and scuba dive. And then I fell through this roof and had the most beautiful 2 months. I really struggled with not being able to go home, and I wanted to just not, I just wanted to be okay. It had been 6 months of a lot of pain right after a 10-month abusive relationship with this yoga teacher. And I just so badly wanted to have fun and feel good. And then I fall through this roof and I break myself. It was so traumatic. My hair was falling out. My nails didn't grow for months. I'd stopped having my period. And
Wow, your body was completely just in shutdown,
it was,
shock, fight or flight.
yeah, it was not happy.
Mm.
But that's when I think I told you this story. I met the guy at the juice bar. Um,
Yes.
I met this man at a juice bar who kind of looked like the comic book guy, like store guy. If you ever watched The Simpsons, a little bit heavier set.
Um,
Anyone who's watched The
mhm.
Simpsons out there, he looked like the comic book store guy. I had a little bit of a lisp, and he comes up. I'm like on the phone with Ukraine Airlines trying to figure out how to get home, and um, having to extend my flight and not getting a refund and just feeling wholly sorry for myself. And then this guy comes up and sits right next to me at this juice bar and asks this, I don't know, British girl from behind the bar, like, hey, Stephanie, what do you want to talk about today? And she's like, I don't care, like this guy again, like on her phone. He's like, how about the illusion of time? Do you want to talk about the illusion of time? And and she's like, and she like pretends not to hear him. And I was like, excuse me, sir, I would love to talk about the illusion of time. I'm Eli.
Me over here.
um, so we start talking, and I started just, he's so kind and open hearted, and bless his heart for just like saying yes to this conversation with this broken 25-year-old young woman. And I laid it out there for him, and I said, I'm going to be honest with you. I can't even remember his name to this day. I said, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm having a really hard time finding peace with the marriage of divine orchestration and free will. It really was just fundamentally, I didn't feel like I could go back to New York City until I had an understanding of how much control I had over my own experience. Because the idea of divine orchestration sounds wonderful in some respects. Like even just hearing it, you kind of like relax and take an exhale and think, I am taken care of. But it also felt wrong. Like, well, then what's the point? Like, what am I doing anything for if none of it matters and everything's out of my hands?
Are you saying divine orchestration, just for our listeners, in terms of premeditated or fate
Fate is
or?
another term for divine orchestration in my mind.
Yeah.
Um, and then free will, you know, if it's either or, if the conversation is either or, free will feels like too much pressure of feeling like you have to you and you
If you're in
alone,
charge of creating
your own
reality.
reality, your own destiny. Because what do I know? I didn't know what I wanted to do at that point. That was very close to the time when you and I met, and well, a couple years before, and I was still trying to figure out what am I doing with my life. Is it acting? Is it yoga teaching? Is it producing? And I was having, you know, an existential crisis with a capital E of who am I? What do I want? And who is the one who's asking these questions? And
Oof.
and yeah, it just really came down to how much control do I have over my own experience, and if it's none, then what's the point? And and
Yeah. How long did you sit in that hole for?
about a year. But the thing is, I asked this guy, and we were the juice bar was in a bar. So, like, back to this idea of this spiritual healing that I was going through. Um, I wasn't anticipating on continuing to ask these questions. I had just put it out of my mind. I thought, well, maybe I'll never know. It's time to just drink beer and scuba dive. I left that
Yeah,
world.
so you're saying in
Yeah,
India you were very much starting to contemplate these things, but then when you left India you were like, "Oh, that is where my spiritual practice existed, and now I'm going to Thailand where we just do a full moon party and get drunk and have a lot of fun." And
essentially, yeah. I was very much compartmentalizing all things human and fun and mundane with spirituality and healing and otherworldly. And I didn't anticipate finding after asking so I did my vipassana in India, like asking gurus and nuns and you know self-proclaimed experts in the field of enlightenment all over India, right? And not coming to the solution and the answer and the peace that I was craving. Um, I was feeling a little frustrated, and then to be in this juice bar with this, it turns out he was a scientist of all things, like not even a you know not even a yoga teacher. He was a scientist in Thailand.
quantum physics, baby. Welcome.
He was definitely in the quantum physics, but he was, you know, on a grant from the U.S. in Thailand, like working on an experiment. And I told him this dilemma of like, I need to know, like, how do I know who I am, who's asking the questions, where is peace until you find it? Um, where do divine orchestration and free will intersect, and is it me? And he said divine orchestration and free will exist. They both exist at the same time, but they both don't exist because they're constructs of the mind. And the human eye can't see the eye. So we will never know, and that's okay. And sort of in that moment, I was like, oh. And I completely, you know, those moments where you just sort of on a physical level get it, and you find that sense of peace that you didn't really even know that you were fully looking for. I
It's like the weight of trying to figure that out, and then you were like, "Wait, actually that's not even potentially a real truth anyway."
Well, there was nothing to figure out. There was nobody and nothing to figure out, and it was just a truth that finally embodied itself in me. And I cried a little, and since then I've kind of been on this track to like, which is much more joyful and much lighter, looking for um, you know, all things otherworldly and ways to access mindfulness and wellness and introspection and a better relationship to the universe around us via a better relationship to ourselves, with this really profound understanding that both of those exist at the same time, and the intersection is in our observation of it. So as the narrator of
Mm.
the story, right? You and I both
Yeah.
bonded over storytelling and a love for
Yeah.
the stories of the universe. And so I would say that is my healing journey.
That is quite the journey. And you've obviously always been a deep soul who's questioned things, the meaning of life potentially. Although you, growing up, was this illness at university or at college, was that the first time you started to question things? Up until that point, do you think you were just sort of going through the motions and subscribing to, say, the Matrix, or were you questioning things from a young age?
It was both of those things. I was questioning things on a deep level from an early age. My mom told me this story of, I went through a phase that maybe I was like 2 or 3, like young, um, never sleeping. I've always, stayed up in the middle of the night contemplating the vast intricacies. And like I would just go up to her door, my parents' door, in the middle of the night and stand there like a creep, until
Baby Eli.
3-year-old, like just staring at them until they woke up. And because she's a mother, so she would sense that I was there, and she would wake up
Mm.
and she'd be like, "What is it, Elizabeth?" And I'd be like, "What language does God speak?"
Wow.
So I was always, uh,
You're
I was
curious.
definitely curious.
Cosmically curious. I'm going to jump in here for a sec to talk to you about my all time favorite skincare product, Osea's Sea Serum. Because when I first discovered the benefits of hyaluronic acid a few years ago, I fell madly in love with it and I went on a hunt to find the perfect formula. Most of them, although they worked, they left my face with a kind of tacky, sticky feeling that turned into a big shiny mess after I put on moisturizer and foundation. But then I stumbled across Osea's Sea Serum and I couldn't believe how easily it settled into my skin without making me look like a disco ball by the end of the day. Osea's newly upgraded formula contains two powerful types of hyaluronic acid, plus Japanese miru seaweed, which replenishes and balances the skin's natural moisture level, volcanic marine ferment to plump and smooth out those fine lines, and snow mushroom to form a hydration layer on the skin which seals in all the moisture. And not only that, and this is the reason I'm so happy to stand behind this company, Osea is also vegan, cruelty free, climate neutral, and they've just become ocean positive, which for me, being an Aussie growing up in the ocean, is a truly meaningful, high integrity company ethos that I'm excited to support. So, if you would like to try this awesome hyaluronic sea serum and support a certified ethical company in the process, you can use my discount code UA10, so that's Urban Ascension 10, UA10, to receive 10% off when you go to Osea's website, and that's spelt OSEA. It'll change your life. Well, your skin's life anyway. It certainly did mine.
Also, I was a really, really hard worker, and I really identify with both of those. A seeker, I'm a seeker for sure, but also a warrior. And I really felt fulfilled in other ways by the hustle in New York City until just a couple of years ago, of working towards goals that seemed like they had meaning, but also, are arbitrary, because goals are arbitrary. So I had always been sort of juggling, like, how to reconcile purpose while knowing purpose is a story in and of itself.
Yeah. And so, do you feel like you found, I guess, reconciliation with that? Where do you sit with that currently?
I'm much more comfortable being holding, how do I say this? I'm much more comfortable now, no, sitting in the reality that nothing is real, and there's, no truth is absolutely true. And that while there are a lot of forces out there at work that we cannot see nor understand or control, what we can control is the container in which we structure our lives. And containers for our lives hold a lot of things. They hold our Google Calendar, they hold, how we decorate our room, and they hold our body, a container of our body, and the way that we structure our emotions, like how we our relationship with how we build the containers of our lives affect the way that we perceive the world, and those perceptions affect the stories that we write about it. And now I have that knowledge. So when I'm feeling really sad and particularly purposeless, I was feeling that way Monday, Tuesday. I have a lot more compassion for myself now. Like if I need to just take a day, Jacoby, and sit in the bathtub and cry, I will, because I know that,
Mm.
it's temporary, and that's the emotion moving through the container that day. And I know how to, pick myself back up and find purpose, even if I know that purpose is arbitrary. That purpose looks like whatever container I build for it, in that day.
Mm.
Um, I feel like I'm talking in circles, but it makes sense in my head. The goal is
No, no, I completely, I completely
I
understand.
have more
I
peace with
completely
the knowledge
understand.
that our goals are somewhat arbitrary, right? Because what we want changes with new information. So based on the information we have right now about the world and ourselves, we have our wants and we have our goals. Those don't really matter. What matters is how those goals make us feel. And so as long as the
Mm.
goal is making me feel like I want to get up in the morning and take care of myself and take care of the people around me and gives me the fire that, makes me feel
Mm.
like the capital P purpose that I want, then that's what matters, right? Because it's to say one more cliche phrase, that's, the journey, not the destination. The goal can change, but, what really matters is how the journey makes you feel. Yeah.
Mm. And what are your thoughts on being
Mm.
goalless and being able to find peace in just
I
being?
envy those people. I really do. I really do. I would love to feel, and I've really explored that too, because I lived in New York City for my formative years. I moved there to go to NYU Tisch for acting when I was 18. And except for a few stints, in Bali with you or India, I lived there until I was 30. And then I happened to move just upstate to nature right before the pandemic. And so all of the goals that I thought were really important and what I wanted kind of vanished during COVID because of my business model. And so
Hmm.
I do feel like I spent a couple of years pretty goalless, and it's been really uncomfortable. It feels like I'm sinking while I'm floating at the same time. So when you feel like you don't
Hmm.
have any boundaries, I mean, that's where purposelessness lives. And it's not for me, I'm going to be honest. So I've
Yeah.
been working
Yeah. Yeah.
pretty.
So you've been working on that
Yes,
container.
like really deliberately building a container that makes me happy, and I'm it's going pretty slow, which, for me is it's an uncomfortable place to be. I really like to have everything
Mm.
figured out yesterday, and I'm still figuring that one out.
Yeah. So how are you is it such a beautiful place that you're in, and I love how vulnerable you are in just expressing that that's where you are with it all. But I also know you do a lot of work to help other people, particularly women, create their own containers, whether it's through your company, Drunk Yoga, or it's through Divine Your Story, or it's through the work you were doing with the children in
Mhm.
Africa. So tell us a bit about now that figured out how to create your own container, that you now try to help other people define their containers.
Yeah, I mean, that's also kind of a work in progress. And I'm being a little bit more patient with myself, not having all of the answers figured out today. What I know is that I care deeply about empowering women. And what I know is that I have a unique skill set to do that in um, my skills are community based theater and having a good aptitude for being able to express mindfulness and relationship with the universe, right? Spirituality in a really accessible way using storytelling. And so when I lead these Divine Your Story workshops or facilitate a really cool drunk yoga experience, whether I'm teaching it or I'm teaching other teachers how to do it, it really is creating a container that makes individuals feel safe to engage with those around them. And then the result is this feeling of belonging. And so that's where I
Mm.
am with that work is I understand now that the best thing I can do for women to help them feel empowered is help them discover a sense of belonging in and of themselves and with those around them. Um, I don't know how it's going to look in the future, but right now I'm teaching workshops upon request for women's
Mm-hmm.
organizations, nonprofits, different groups, things like that. Outside of drunk yoga, sort of corporate team building events, and I am going on drunk yoga tour soon, which I'd love to tell you about.
Oh, that's exciting. We want to hear all about
Yeah.
that.
So using all of those spaces to empower women in any way I can, using the same language I've just described, helping them understand what containers in their lives exist, maybe unknowingly, how to change them really
Mm-hmm.
practically in a very, very easy, fun, let your hair down, like laugh at yourself. This is none of this is serious, sort of change the container kind of way. Observe the perspectives that they have about their lives, and then rewrite the narrative. Divine Your Story and Drunk Yoga have a lot in common that way. One of them is much more provocative than the other for obvious reasons. And these women in Ghana, I really playing with the friendship bracelet. These women in Ghana, these girls, that was a much Jacoby obviously knows this. None of you listening know this. I went to Ghana last November to teach workshops for young girls. It was sexual health workshops, but so it was teaching them about periods and menstruation, as simple as what is a period to how to use a tampon. And
Mm.
then I actually got myself involved in teaching community based theater there because I asked to. And I made that opportunity for myself.
And you just wanted to add one more thing onto the plate.
Well, that's what I really wanted to do. So I guess I free willed that divinely orchestrated experience. um,
Yeah.
so I worked with these girls in a local school, 13 of them. They are now the loves of my life. I care about them so deeply. They are middle school aged. And community based theater, for those who don't know exactly what it is, it's when a theater facilitator goes into an existing community and learns everything about them, what's important to them, their culture, their beliefs, what's going on with them, how maybe they're not seeing each other's perspectives in the best way that they could, what's making them feel disempowered, and how then we can use storytelling and theater to bridge those gaps in a more empowered way, because seeing things through the lens of art is a much easier way for people to communicate, right? um, so then you create with them a performance art piece, and then they perform it for their community.
And that's amazing because it sounds like all of these things that you're doing and you're creating this sense of belonging internally and externally, which then creates, as a byproduct of that, purpose with a capital P, as you say, because it's not a purpose that is thrust upon you, I guess, via society. It's that purpose that comes from within you once you connect to that sort of sense of self within you. And then you're so much closer to being integrated and, I guess, standing in oneness and feeling connected to the universe and hopefully touching a little bit of peace.
Yeah. I'm not sure, Jacoby, if you've read this book, but I keep telling everyone about it. I think I'm the last to read it. The Way of Integrity by Martha Beck.
I haven't.
Okay, so that's next on your reading list. Buy it right now. I'm reading it right now, and it's really giving me a
Mm.
lot of language that I didn't even know I needed about how to let go of the hustle. Um,
Yeah.
and what it's reminding me is that this way to integrity with ourselves, which leads to that sense of capital P purpose, is an ongoing conversation. Um, I always really like to have everything figured out in absolutes all the time, even if I know maybe they're not true. Just sort of write a whole story about this is goodbye, and this is the start, and this is what I will be doing for the rest of my life. And
Mm.
it's not so healthy because as we get older, we realize everything is only temporary. And yeah,
Everything.
she gives a lot of language to how this process and this path to integrity, and just being in personal alignment with why you're here and why you're doing what you're doing, is a conversation with your body and your mind and your soul.
Mm.
And when you're not in alignment, the universe tells you and your body tells you. You get sick, you fall through a roof, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the healing journey begins. And the healing journey is coming back to integrity within
Yeah,
yourself.
it's just an ongoing conversation. Yeah. So I guess I said that because what you said about the what purpose has to do with integrity, it just reminded me that it's always an ongoing conversation with yourself. It's not like, oh, found my purpose, that's done, let's watch Netflix.
Yeah.
Sort of like
Yeah.
a everyday sort of check-in.
It's and it's an evolving
Yeah.
thing, and we have these greater goals, but really the purpose is, or the goals, we're trying to achieve happiness, aren't we? We're trying to feel complete. We're trying to feel, oh, when I get that or when I do that, I'll have this and therefore I will be happy. But actually it's the process of having a purpose and feeling aligned in that purpose that is the
Yeah.
happiness. On, as you said, it's the capital P that gets you up and out of bed every day and excited to do your thing.
Yeah, but sometimes it doesn't look like what we think it looks like. And it's just good to remember that there is no there, only here, and
Mm,
being okay with that. I think for me, if there's anyone else out there who's, derived a lot of ego, like in sense of, I say ego like by meaning my sense of self. Um,
mm,
so not necessarily in a derogatory way, just like the way that I know myself to be in the world through my accolades and accomplishments. Um, and then to
yeah.
see all of those sort of dissolve in the last couple of years into, wait, nobody cares. Nobody cares. So what if nobody cares?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a good book for remembering that there's no there. So what now? What are you going to do with that?
Yeah, we're going to put that book in the show notes. I think everyone's going to rush out and buy
Please.
it. So, tell us about what's coming up for you with your drunk yoga tour. When does it kick off? How long does it go for? And firstly, what is drunk yoga?
Oh, right. So drunk yoga. Drunk yoga is not literal. In case you're all getting really stressed out right now.
We're getting slaughtered.
I like to say that we intoxicate the convention of yoga, not the yogi. Um, Most of you can get a sense that my background is in experimental storytelling and experimental wellness, right? So that said, in 2017, I did walk into a bar. I was not entirely sober in the moment. And the owner of the bar, we were joking. He was a friend of mine, and he said, oh, you're a yoga teacher, something to the effect of, you should teach me yoga. I can't even touch my toes. And then sure enough, he bent over, touched his toes, and said, oh, I guess I can do it when I'm drunk. And I sort of flirtatiously said, let's do drunk yoga. And then I thought, wait a second, this could be a really fun way to make yoga more of an entertainment experience, like break down the fourth wall, right? That we know to
Mm-hmm.
be in theater to sort of separate two worlds, because it exists in yoga classes too, right? Like yoga mats sort of lined up in militaristic rows, and we're all just soldiers
Mm, and
doing what we're told to be good soldiers in the yoga world, while the yoga teacher is there just telling us what to do with our body. And for some reason, the social contract, right? We just know we're not supposed to talk to them, and we just know we're not supposed to talk to people around us, and still somehow cultivate a sense of belonging and community. I was getting burnt out from that whole charade. Um, and so I had already been thinking about ways to break down that fourth wall. Turns out a drink in hand really helped, whether it's wine or coffee or juice or beer, the prop of having that social ritual of a beverage, much like you're at a party. And then I created these sort of drinking games like you lose your balance, you have to take a sip. If you mix up your left and your right foot, you might have to turn to your neighbor and give them a compliment. If you spill your drink, you have to make up a dance move. We make up all sorts of things to keep it dynamic, engaged, silly, leveraging the art of play and laughter as healing mechanisms in and of themselves. And I codified this sort of 90-minute interactive class with beverage in hand, and then it went really, really viral with some press because I free willed / divinely orchestrated some press. I called them. uh,
yeah, i.e., I took the step of picking up my phone.
and I made that happen. And I just thought it was a good idea. And lucky for me, so did the rest of the world, because it just went
Yeah,
internationally
it went
crazy
viral.
viral. Yeah, you were there for that.
It was wild. It was like overnight. Suddenly you had a
Yeah, it
business.
was overnight. I was Equinox yoga teacher one day. The next day, I was CEO of this international brand, the business insider business, no, International Business Times called, and they were like, "Excuse me, can we please talk to the CEO of Drunk Yoga?" And I was like, "I'm Eli Walker." They're like, "Are you the CEO?" drunk yoga, and I kid you not, Jacoby,
And in that moment,
I
the boss was born.
I said, hold on one moment, and I muted the phone and I Googled what does CEO stand for. It's like, oh, all right.
Wow.
And so I put this down. I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's me. And anyway,
That is the best thing I've ever heard.
now I have this. So that was 5 years ago. It's a full fledged company. We've got teachers across the country, in Dallas and Nashville, actually, a couple of teachers in Nashville, LA, New York City, virtually worldwide. We work with corporations to bring really unique, customized corporate team building events for workplace wellness, as well as do a lot of pop-ups with hotels. And so in 2022, 2023, I'm going on tour to various cities across the country doing like 3-day pop-ups featuring my newest drunk yoga experience called The Art of Getting Over Yourself, which I'm really excited about. So everyone can follow along at Drunk Yoga on Instagram and Eli Walker Stories on Instagram. You'll kind of get the behind the scenes there. And we're kicking off in October.
I hope this episode has inspired you to keep going on what can sometimes be a tough road to inner peace and true happiness. If you want to dive deeper into what we talked about today, go to thehealingcocoon.co for show notes and all things personal growth. And don't forget, if you're loving The Healing Cocoon, then put that love into action and subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you download your podcasts. And until next time, my friends, let's rise and shine together.